Hey guys, it's Michael, and I am out here hanging out with Mr. Buttons and just loving on him. Have you guys gotten a chance to hang out with this guy? He is a really cool horse. So Mr. Buttons has actually been with us just about a year. He will be celebrating his 1-year anniversary with us next week, and so we're just super excited to have him. But before we go any further in Mr. Button's story, I'm curious how you guys are doing on practicing respect. And what is respect? Respect is showing others they are valuable by how you treat them. So why don't you take a minute and talk to your wrangler and share about a time in which you have practiced respect, or maybe somebody has shown respect to you. Great work, guys. Well, Mr. Buttons has been here for 1 year as of next week. And shortly after he arrived, he was unfortunately involved in an accident which resulted in him breaking his leg. In fact, this leg right here that you can see, he's not putting any weight on. But Mr. Buttons was kicked by one of the horses, the full-size horses, and he was put in a cast for about 4 months, and then he ended up being in a soft cast for a while, and eventually graduated out of that. And he's chewing on me. So he eventually graduated out of all that, and now he's able to walk on his own. And but Mr. Buttons will always have a limp, and I'm sure he will always be reminded of what happened between him and one of the bigger horses. You may be wondering, what on earth does this have to do with respect, and why are we talking about this today? Well, in today's story, there was a situation in which the man in our story was hurt by the people who loved him, and he decided to show them respect even when it was really hard. Let's take a look. All right, guys, so today's story is all about respect, showing respect to others even when it's hard. So, and what is respect again? Respect is showing others they are valuable by how you treat them. And I'm excited to hear all the stories of the things that you guys are doing to show other people around you respect. I mean, we even learned about respect from a donkey. We learned respect from following the king and being trusted with things that we need to drink. And this week, our story is about showing respect even when it's hard. And our story is about a man named Joseph. Now, this story, if you want to look it up in your Bible, it's found in the book of Genesis. Now, is Genesis in the Old Testament or the New Testament? It's in the New Old Testament. I almost got you there. It is actually the very first book of the Bible, so it's pretty easy to find. So it's the very first book of the Bible. Chapter 45 is where you can find out the part that we're going to be picking up on in just a minute. But I have to give you a little bit of a background, okay? So Joseph had lots of brothers, and he was his dad's favorite. And he had a coat of many colors, and his brothers got really mad at him, and they sold him into slavery. And because of that, Joseph's life turned upside down. He was put in prison, he was a slave, he was away from his family, and his dad thought that he had been killed. His brothers made it seem like he had been killed. Well, it's kind of interesting. You see, at one point, there was, Joseph was promoted into second in command in all of Egypt, in all of the land, and second command to Pharaoh. And he was in charge of making sure there was plenty of food to eat during a time of famine. You see, there had been a dream that there was going to be 7 years of, like where the land was producing lots of food and everything, and Joseph knew that that was what this dream was about, and he shared it with Pharaoh. And they made a plan to store lots of food, because following during those 7 years, there was going to be 7 years of famine where there wasn't going to be a whole lot of food, and so they were going to need to eat from the years that they had saved up on. So we're in the middle of the famine where this story picks up, okay? So now you know a little bit more about Joseph. Well, Joseph's family was in a situation where they had not prepared and they had not stored up food like they needed to, and they were needing some serious help. So that's when they decided to go to Egypt. Well, little did they know that they would be seeing their long-lost brother Joseph, and that he was going to be in a position of authority over them to decide if they should get food or not. Let's take a look and see how Joseph responded. So Joseph is second in command to Pharaoh in Egypt. He was in charge of all the food distribution. Remember, there were 7 years of plenty, and during that time, Joseph had helped them to store up all the food and make sure that they had plenty to eat during the 7 years of famine when there wasn't anything to eat. Well, Joseph's family hadn't saved up and stored up the food like they needed to, and so they had to come to Egypt and ask Pharaoh and his officials for food. And so little did they know they were going to be encountering their brother Joseph when they came to Pharaoh, because see, they had lost track of their brother once they sold him into slavery. So Joseph is second in command, and in walks his brothers. What on earth would that be like for you guys after all they did to him? They sold him into slavery, they picked on him all the time when he did live with them, and they just left him for dead. What would be going on for you? Well, Joseph had an interesting response to them. You see, there was one more brother that wasn't with them, and he asked about his brother Benjamin. And he asked that the brothers return home and bring their brother Benjamin with him before he would give them food. Now, still, they don't know that this is Joseph. So they go on their way and they return back with Benjamin. And in chapter 45, where this story picks up, is Joseph is just so distraught in seeing his brothers. He's so sad and his heart is broken for them that he finally has all the officials leave, and he finally breaks down. He's weeping and he's like, "I'm Joseph, it's me. I'm the brother that you sold into slavery." Could you imagine what that's like for the brothers to hear this? They thought he was dead. They thought he was long gone. And now here he is in charge of their food. So he starts to ask a little bit more about their family and how his dad is doing. And in this time, Joseph decides a really important thing. You see, he decided to show them respect even when it was hard. So Joseph showed them respect. He forgave them, he hugged them, and he loved them, and he sent them on their way to get their dad and to tell them that their son Joseph was alive and to come back. I don't know about you, but that would have been really hard for me to show respect during. In those moments, to see the people that had hurt you the most and to be able to show respect to them. Kind of makes me think a little bit about Mr. Buttons and his injury. I do think it's interesting that he doesn't seem to be bothered at all by the horses. He shows the horses respect even when it's hard. One of these guys possibly broke his leg, and he still shows them respect. It's quite a challenge for me, and I don't know about you guys. I have no problem showing respect to people when it's easy, but what about when it's hard? So why don't you take a minute and talk to your wrangler? When has there ever been a situation in which showing respect to somebody was really hard? Take just a couple minutes and we'll be back. Great work. Man, there are so many difficult times to show respect. You know, and what is respect? Respect is showing others they are valuable by how you treat them. So I'm wondering, what could we learn from Joseph's story that might help us in those moments of when it's difficult to show respect? Joseph showed love, respect, forgiveness, and he saw something in his brothers and in his family that allowed him to love them even though it was hard, to show respect even though it was hard. Why don't you take a minute and talk to your wrangler and see if there's anything different you could do in those situations when it's hard to show other people respect. Fantastic work, guys. I've been so impressed with all of you and how you are working so hard to figure out ways that we can show respect to the people in our lives and in our area. So this week, my challenge is for you. Anytime you think about somebody that has hurt you and that you still have to show respect to, I want you to think about Mr. Buttons. And I want you to think about Joseph. And what did they do? They showed respect even when it was hard. And if they can, I know you and I can too. We'll see you next week, guys.
R-E-S-P-E-C-T, find out what it means to me. R-E-S-P-E-C-T, take F-T-C-T. Sock it to me, sock it to me, sock it to me, Zary, What you want, baby, I got it. What you need, do you know I got it? All I'm asking is for a little respect when you come home.
Oh, yes, you're such a good boy. Hey guys, it's Michael, and I am just out here hanging out with Mr. Buttons. But yes, Mr. Buttons, we are working on the virtue of respect. Thank you. So what kind of situations have you had over the last couple of weeks? Went into a rap, and then he graduated out of that and is now able to, you guys wanted bloopers last week, now you got them.